Thank you, Francisca. And again, welcome everyone to the Laurelwood Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project neighborhood meeting. Tonight, I'd like to introduce our project team. Our project manager, Travis Smith, who is an engineer in Public Works and Engineering Department. And also our consultant on the project, Brian Feeney with 3J Engineering. Tonight, we'll go through a few different items. Next slide, please. Project description, project area, existing conditions, proposed design alternatives for the east and west side of Southwest Laurelwood Avenue, pros and cons and comparison of the east and west side, project schedule, virtual open house platform, and public engagement, and then of course, questions and answers or Q&A. The Laurelwood Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project will provide a continuous sidewalk along one side of Laurelwood Avenue between Shoals Ferry and Apple Way. This project will also help to reduce conflict points between pedestrians and vehicles once the sidewalk is built. Sidewalk improvement is one of our 10 priorities outlined by the Beaverton City Council, and construction of this sidewalk has been listed as a high priority to provide a pedestrian route linking the neighborhood to different amenities and the community throughout Beaverton, connecting residences along Laurelwood Avenue to their homes, work, restaurants, entertainment, parks, schools, and churches. In addition, the Laurelwood Avenue Sidewalk Project was selected as a top pedestrian project in the city's active transportation plan. The Beaverton Active Transportation Plan was adopted in February of 2018, where there were many projects that were evaluated, and this was one of the projects that rose to the top. The new sidewalk will serve the immediate community in accessing transit safely and improving walkability to area businesses on Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, as well as the neighboring and nearby Raleigh Hills Elementary School. By creating safe mobility, pedestrian infrastructure enhances opportunities for safe routes to school, community interaction, and also strengthening the neighborhood connections. The outcomes include a design that encourages safe, multimodal transportation options such as walking and transit. Next slide, please. Some of you who are on the call this evening may remember Travis Smith and myself walking around in February, chatting with folks about this important project for the neighborhood. We went door to door and talked to folks about the sidewalk project on Laurelwood Avenue between Shoals Ferry Road and Apple Way. However, so Laurelwood Avenue is located within the city of Beaverton. However, the majority of the residents live in unincorporated Washington County. So hopefully there are a few of you that are on this presentation this evening, and we're so glad that you're here. Next slide, please. Go ahead, Travis.
All right, good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Travis Smith, work with the city of Beaverton. Wish we were able to do this in person, to be honest. It'd be a lot more enjoyable. Just want to give a brief overview on the existing conditions, and I'm going to make it brief because you all know the existing conditions far better than we do. You live there. So I really just want to highlight just a few points that are going to be some of the bases of our design. First off is that it is difficult, as everyone knows, to travel by foot or bicycle between Shoals Ferry heading north on Laurelwood. That is due to multiple factors, primarily because there are intermittent stretches of sidewalk. There are some fairly good-sized ditches immediately adjacent to the road, and the two 10-foot lanes make it quite difficult actually to navigate by foot or by bicycle. So that is why this project has been pushed to the forefront. That's why City of Beaverton is wanting to see this happen for you all. So we're excited to see this step happening, taking the design forward. And by way of introduction for Brian Feeney, who is he's the consultant engineer on this project, just give a quick history on that. Brian and his company were selected as our consultants in early early 2020. And since that time, they have been working on the development of design alternatives. And so Brian's going to take some time here to share a bit about both of the alternatives, the pros and cons for those, as well as our preferred alternative at this point. So I will pass it off to Brian.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Once again, my name is Brian Feeney, and I'm with 3J Consulting. I'm a project manager in their civil engineering group. I'm just going to quickly go a couple slides that kind of highlight the existing conditions that I'm sure everybody is aware of. That's out there, that's showing that there is no sidewalk along most of the corridor along Laurelwood. So 3J was tasked to look at the alternate designs. So we looked at connecting the sidewalks fully from Apple Way all the way down to Shoals Ferry, and looking at either the west side of the road or the east side of the road. This project was funded for one side or the other. And this would include either a 5-foot sidewalk that would be detached with a planter strip and some street trees between the road and the sidewalk, or if we had to go curb tight due to restraints, it would be a 6-foot wide sidewalk. In addition to that, the sidewalk would be designed at its widest location, or as we call it, the ultimate location. So that would allow the pavement to get widened as well, because you're going to have a new curb where it would be, and then it widens that road. So it actually helps out with a sidewalk as well as widening the road for the traveling. In addition to sidewalk, there'll be some planter strips. We're installing some flow-through planters on one of the sides to help treat the stormwater from the runoff of the existing pavement. And also there will be street lights added to the entire corridor as well. Here's an example of if we looked at the west side of the road as you're looking north. You would have a little pavement widening, as I mentioned, so it would widen that side of the road to a 17-foot section, as well as a planter strip and a sidewalk that is disconnected where we can. What that looks like in an aerial view, as you guys can see from the exhibit here, the green hatch would be your planter strip with street trees, and then you'd have kind of closer to the homes would be your detached sidewalk in those areas. So we're putting in curb, sidewalk, landscape strips. And that would go from Shoals Ferry Road to the existing sidewalk that is about 2 houses south of the apartment complex on the north end of Laurelwood. So on the east side, we looked at the same thing. So it's a very similar cross section as I just explained on the west. You would have a pavement widening, planter strip where we can, and a sidewalk. Those extents we looked at was from Shoals Ferry, and you can see on this exhibit that they are significantly longer because there was a longer gap of sidewalk needs. From pretty much Shoals Ferry Road, there's a little existing sidewalk along that section, but we'll tie into that potentially. Go all the way north, almost to Laurelwood Court. There's a new subdivision there, or fairly new, that had sidewalk already. And then there's an existing community just north of that. And then the project would stop just south of Apple Way. There's an existing development that's in works that developer would probably connect to sidewalk there. There's some environmental issues as well to that connection. So this option would look at not fully connecting the sidewalk on the entire corridor. So once we did that, we walked the site, took photos, we analyzed everything where the sidewalk would be, and we came up with a pros and cons comparison. And this summarizes a 90-page report that we provided or so. So alternate one is the west side, so option one. Some of the positives there were fewer right-of-way acquisitions, so less property needing to be acquired from property owners, so widening the road. Fewer impacts that we noticed, less driveway connections, less water quality treatment, so less area or pavement area that we would be required to treat. And this provides a continuous pedestrian route from Shoals Ferry Road and Beaverton Hillsdale Highway. So it connects the entire frontage with existing and proposed sidewalk. Some of the negatives are that's where the overhead power lines are on that side of the road. So there are some potential utility relocates of those overhead lines. The Homewood Street intersection would have to get reconstructed a little bit just to meet ADA requirements. So there's a little more road work there. And there's on that side of the road, I'm sure neighbors that have lived in the area knows that that is got some grade differences between the existing street and the existing home. So there's some regrading needed there. So there may be a potential for small little 18-inch retaining walls to keep the sidewalk up at the street level. The estimated cost for this side of the road is about $1.07 million. And just want to note, this is the preferred option that the city has seen. So as we look at the east side, this one's kind of a little opposite of the other one. So there's fewer utility impacts because of the overhead lines are on the other side. There's less grading needed. It provides a continuous pedestrian and student access from Raleigh Hills side of the street. So as on Shoals Ferry Road, they don't have to cross Laurelwood. And there's also fewer street crossings, so less ADA requirement upgrades. Some of the negatives though, there's more properties that are being affected, so more right-of-way takes, more trees that might get affected. There's more treatment of stormwater, a little more private fencing to rebuild and remove. Just overall, the length of the project's longer. So more curb and sidewalk is needed. And existing ditches that are out there that'll be impacted and improved. And then the one big thing to note is that it would not provide a continuous pathway from Shoals Ferry down to Beaverton Hillsdale Highway on one side due to that private developer not completing that yet. Now, it's not to say it won't happen in the future. It's just not going to be there during this project. And then this cost also came in at about $1.34 million. Travis, back to you.
Yep. Thank you, Brian. And moving on, for the reasons that Brian has cited and that his firm has come up with, the city will be making the recommendation to move forward with the west side design. So what does that look like from here out? So next steps for us are making that recommendation to City Council. And then that will allow us to enter what we call the design development phase, where Brian and his team will begin to take that conceptual design that you just saw and begin to put a lot more detail into it. So we'll be looking at it three-dimensionally, not just horizontally, and beginning the process of more significant conversations with the adjacent property owners, as well as right-of-way acquisition. Permitting will be part of this next phase. So all of these things we're anticipating will take somewhere in the ballpark of until somewhere in the ballpark of early to mid 2021, depending on a few different factors. So that's how we see the design phase moving forward. Once the design phase is done, then we would be moving towards construction. And at this point, there are a few things in the air that question marks, but we're anticipating construction will be either summer, fall period of either 2021 or 2022. So we're moving forward with the intent of 2021, waiting to see how the design development works out, as well as a few other factors. As we note here in the text, and as you're all aware, driving through construction zones, it's going to impact traffic flow through your neighborhood. There will be interruptions. There will be some annoyances, some noise to deal with. However, some things that we're going to make sure happen are that local traffic will be able to get in and out of your homes throughout the entire construction period. So that will never be the case that you're not able to get into your homes, regardless of which side of the street you're on. We will be available as well throughout that construction period. Something that we want to make sure that we do well is take care of any individual needs that come up during that time. So that could be anything. With that, I will pass it off and let Stacy, she's going to talk a little bit about the virtual open house that is actually online right now. So.
Great, thank you, Travis. All of that was really great information. And as you can see, there's a virtual open house and there is a link that is in this presentation, but also if you go to, Brian, if you can click on that link for me. You click on the link, it will take you to the City of Beaverton webpage specifically for the Laurelwood Avenue Sidewalk project webpage. And as you scroll down, you'll see project description, you'll see the virtual open house, and a link there for the virtual open house. Go ahead and click that link for me, please. And then we'll take you here to the virtual open house. So this is really a live presentation this evening. And then after this evening, this virtual open house will be open through Friday, August 7th. So go ahead, if you can scroll through the virtual open house for me, Brian. So it just talks about how to use this virtual open house and this platform, gives sort of a basic project background, which is something that I had described earlier, on project description, talks a little bit more about exactly what the project is about, project area, existing conditions. So some of those photos that we saw earlier, and Brian was showing that, you know, unfortunately there aren't sidewalks on both sides or one side of the street. And then proposed design alternatives. So the different options, we have the west side, and then you'll be able to click on downloading a PDF of that whole entire corridor because the picture is a little bit small. And then of course the east side, and then the same thing for the east side, it will show the entire corridor. And then we go into the preferred design alternatives, east and west side, kind of the pros and the cons. And as you continue to go further down, talks a little bit about the project schedule, which Travis just went through, and then also submitting the feedback. And so when you submit that feedback, you can go ahead and see if we can click on that submit feedback button, Brian, see if it'll work. It takes you to a survey here for the Laurelwood Avenue Sidewalk project, and it just gives you some basic questions here and some feedback that we'd like to hear from you, and whether or not you would like the project team or someone from the project team to contact you. So in light of this current COVID situation, we had planned to have an in-person, obviously, open house with the neighborhood, and so we moved to a virtual platform. And we really hope that all of you, you know, were able to learn something exciting about your neighborhood and this exciting sidewalk project that is coming to you very soon. And with that, we can open it up to questions and answers. Thank you, Brian, for sharing.
There are a couple of questions that have already come in. So the first question is, as an outcome of the project, would it be possible to decrease the speed limit to 25 miles per hour? People drive way too fast on this relatively small street with pedestrians, wildlife, and cyclist concerns. And whoever would like to answer is welcome to take that question.
I can at least give an intermediate answer to that. Our city traffic engineer is actually involved in this project as well. And I know that that topic has been brought up with him before. And so it's actually, it won't be part of this project to adjust the street or the speed limit. But there is a process, and I don't know it offhand, Stacy. I don't know if you might know that offhand. But if the person, whoever submitted that question, could send us their email, I could put you in contact with the, I think it's an online form through the city's webpage to basically submit a request to have the speed evaluated.
That's correct, Travis. Go ahead and send us your email, and then we can kind of move that through and get that submitted to the city traffic engineer.
And I'll also take a moment and see if I can quickly pull that up on the city's website and be able to post that in the chat for everybody to see. So the next question is, what is the plan for improving pedestrian safety on the east side across from Apple Way if there is still no sidewalk after some time?
At this point, this project is just really looking at the limits that we have defined. That is honestly something I would have to get back. Unless, Stacy, are you aware of anything in the active transportation plan that discusses further limits to the north or to the east?
I would say not at this time. Again, this project is for Laurelwood from Apple Way to Shoals Ferry Road. On the west side, there is a sidewalk that does extend up to Beaverton Hillsdale Highway.
Okay, so the next question that we have is how many of the large trees will need to be cut down?
The exact number is not defined yet because we are still in the early preliminary alternative analysis. That will be coming at the next phase. So the next step is to get final surveys out there, to get our arborists that we have on the team out there to determine the health of the trees. So some of the trees may, be impacted, but they may be diseased anyways and need to come down. That is all in the next stage. That's our 60% design stage. And then that's when the city will be approaching neighbors about any right-of-way acquisitions and things like that. So it is to be determined. Just based on our initial analysis, though, we noticed that the west side had less impacts just based on our preliminary design of the ultimate location. There is some options if the tree is close to the proposed sidewalk, we might be able to meander around it, but we just won't know that at this time.
All right, and the next question is, will a crosswalk be included in the project for folks on the east side of the street?
That's a great question, and something again that we will evaluate, similar to what Brian said about the looking at the trees. So that's once we approach 60% design, we'll start to consider where that might make the most sense. I would say if anyone has feedback, thoughts on that, please go ahead and provide that feedback in the comments section that Stacy just walked through. We would be happy to look at that. So.
All right, the next question the comment that we have is, my concern is that using the sidewalk on the west side to reach Beaverton Hillsdale Highway requires 3 extra intersection crossings. Can anybody speak to this concern?
Yeah, you are correct. There are more street crossings. That was one of the things that we determined in our analysis. Those are residential streets, so they'll be stop controlled, existing going onto Laurelwood Avenue. And they will have upgraded ADA curb drops for the sidewalk crossings. So it'd be a little more prevalent right now because you'll be pulling up as the design would progress. You would be coming up to a curbed intersection with a stop sign and ADA crossings. It'll be a little safer than you're seeing today. With just edge of pavement and maybe some trees or shrubbery or anything at those intersections. So yes, we do note that there is more crossings, but it would be an improved condition than it is today.
Thank you for everyone who is submitting questions. These are all really great questions and promoting a lot of really good dialogue and in terms of considerations for this project. So thank you. Another attendee said, hello, thank you everyone for all of your effort and communication on this project. My only question, can you please address the private developer topic? Not sure how the general public can understand what this means, as we are not aware of any private developers making moves in this corridor. Thanks.
Yes, I'll speak to that at least briefly. There is a development that's being looked at, and it's actually outside of these project limits. So it's actually a little bit north of Appleway. And so what Brian was alluding to is that we would need them to make their improvements in order for that to be a continuous sidewalk running along the east side. But it's beyond the limits of this project. So I'm not sure, did that answer the question? I don't know if I heard it all.
If that didn't answer the question, you're more than welcome to put more in the chat, or I can also unmute you if you want to ask the question more directly, if you have more specific concerns. So if you do want that, just let me know. You can either raise your hand or indicate so in the chat. The next question we have is, if the West Side project is chosen, will the ditches on the east side remain open ditches?
And the simple answer to that one would be yes. If the sidewalk is ultimately built on the west side, no modifications to the existing ditches would be made.
All right, the individual who asked the previous question about the developers just wanted to note that yes, that answered the question. Could imagine this is in reference to the property on the corner of Shoals Ferry and Laurelwood Avenue.
And if that's in relation to the private developer comment, that property is actually the one on the north end on the east side, right across from Apple Way. There's an existing kind of a creek crossing or a stream right there. And it's right next to, right north of the Laurelwood Estates and just south of that commercial development that's on Beaverton, Hillsdale Highway and Laurelwood.
Are there any other questions that anybody has? I'll also be sure to put the individual who asked that previous question about the developer said, thank you for clarifying. So I'll put the email addresses of Stacy and Travis, who are on the project team at the City of Beaverton. I'll put that in the chat just so that everybody has those handy. Stacy's phone number is also on the project website if you prefer to have a phone conversation with her. But we'll leave it open for a few more minutes just to make sure that we've addressed all questions. As Stacy mentioned previously, you are also welcome to submit questions or feedback through the submit feedback button. And if you would like a member of the project team to follow up with you regarding your question or your concern or your comment, then put your contact information into that submit feedback survey, and then they can follow up with you that way as well. Let's see, we have another question. So can you describe how the project is being funded?
Yeah, I can respond to that. At this point, it's primarily being funded through what we call MSTIP, which is the Major Street Transportation Improvement Program. So it's a county-wide funding program. And they, every 5 years, they go through a cycle where they determine various amounts that go to the various municipalities. And this project, along with 2 other projects for the City of Beaverton, were the recipients of significant portions of those funds. So this, along with another pathway project and then another roadway project, were the 3 primary recipients. Outside of that, it's coming from the City of Beaverton through the street, and then the general fund is what will make the match up on that.
Great. Well, if we don't have any other questions, then we will certainly release you to go enjoy this really beautiful summer evening here in Oregon. But please take a moment to look over the virtual open house. It has a lot of the content that we covered at tonight's open house through this webinar, but it'll give you an opportunity to go through it at your own pace, as well as submitting feedback at the end of it when you have gone through all of the information that you're interested in. So we really appreciate you all joining us tonight virtually. We know that these are unusual times, and so we really wanted to find a way to connect with you all so that we could make sure that we communicated the status of the project, and then we're able and available to answer any questions that anybody has. So I'll give everybody on the project team. Stacy, did you want to say something more?
It looks like there was just one more question that came in about is there also a bike lane going in as part of the widening? Well, I can try to answer this, or Brian, go ahead.
No, I was going to say thanks for catching that as well. I noticed that came in through the chat. The City of Beaverton has classified this street as a neighborhood route, and with their typical sections, they do not have dedicated bike lanes, but with the widening, it will allow a little more safer bike and traffic flow there, just because of one side, it's going to get widened out. you will have a little more comfort level that the street's a little wider, but it will not be striped for a bike lane.
Thanks for catching that, Stacy. We actually have another question that's come in. Please keep your questions coming. We're here for you to be able to answer any questions that you might have. So the question is, how many parking spaces will be left after the project?
That's to be determined at this time. Once again, we're early on in the design stage. The city has a couple options for the width of the road for their neighborhood collector or neighborhood route. One does allow parking along that entire section, and one is a more reduced area. It all comes down to the final right-of-way locations of the individual property owners, and also the willingness of those property owners to allow the city to negotiate purchasing portions of that property. So as we get into the 60% design stage, then that's when the city will be approaching some of those neighbors about those sections if we need it. But we are going to provide parking where we can. It's just not fully dead.
Anything else anybody from the project team wants to say before we wrap up the presentation this evening?
I'll go real quick. I'm really, as a consultant, we're really excited to be a part of the team with the city on this project to help bring a safer corridor to the neighbors in the community in this one. This is our second project, sidewalk project with the city. We just got off of one that's more in the downtown older area, and it was very well received. So we hope it's the same thing that you guys see at the end of this project, that you feel that you got some of your concerns over the area of not having sidewalks were satisfied, and ultimately it's safer for everyone.
It looks like we have another comment from the audience that says, have a good evening and thanks again for holding this event. Very helpful and informative. We're really glad to hear that. Thank you so much for that feedback. We really wanted this to be a meaningful opportunity for us to engage with you around this project.
Yeah. Thanks everybody, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I would just like to extend my thanks as well. It was a pleasure getting to meet at least half of you. I walked up one side of the street. Stacy walked up the other side about 5 months ago. Looking forward to seeing this project move forward. Something I forgot to mention earlier was Stacy and I were really kind of excited after that walk, because after meeting so many of you, to hear about such enthusiastic responses to see this sidewalk come about, it was universal. Everybody wanted to see this project move forward. So anyway, we're happy. We're going to do everything we can to keep this thing moving forward on time, and we will be in touch.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight and taking time out of your evening to participate in this. And like I said, the contact information is in the chat if you want to send Stacy or Travis a direct email. And please feel free to submit any further feedback in the submit feedback form on the website. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. And if anybody needs anything else, just let us know. All right.
Thanks.